Welcome back to Screaming Projector, the podcast about two art forms that always understood each other, horror and metal. This is it. You're back. You're here. I'm here. And I'm so glad you are. This is it. This is the podcast for all things metal, all things horror, and everything in between. The interviews, the deep dives, all of it. Spoiler alert. This podcast discusses 3 films and their endings in full. You've had some time, but if you haven't seen them yet, check them out. Come on back. I'll be here. I want to give a shout out to Marge. You gave me my radio voice. All right, let's get into it. Today's pairing, without naming names yet, one is a melodic death doom band from Connecticut, whose music deals in something more rare than most extreme metal ever does: pure emotional devastation. Not performed darkness, not aesthetic grimness, the real thing: mortality, mental health, the weight of life examined. I sat down with 2 members of that band, and what came out of the conversation went places I genuinely didn't expect. 3 films today. The first, a 2018 horror film directed by a man who said he couldn't even watch horror movies before he became a father, and then made one of the most emotionally devastating creature features ever put to film. The second, a supernatural horror film that hides one of the most honest portrayals of depression ever put to the horror screen, inside what looks like on the surface a Monster in the Dark film. The third, a film from 2007 with an ending so bleak it's been debated by critics for decades. The thread running through all of these: sacrifice, the willing exchange of one life for another. And underneath all of that is a question about beauty. If the most gorgeous parts of a song can carry real weight, or if darkness and beauty are always in tension with each other. Here are today's pairings. Fires in the Distance, the song Harbingers from the album Air Not Meant for Us, 2023. The movies: Quiet Place, 2018, Lights Out, 2016, and The Mist, 2007. Fires in the Distance, a diary, not a mythos. Fires in the Distance formed in Connecticut as guitarist Yegor Savonin's solo project before growing into a full band. His favorite death metal record is Nightmares Made Flesh by Bloodbath, and you can hear that in some of the more raw, more exposed, more aggressive passages in Harbingers. The other reference point that came up from both Yegor and guitarist Brendan Hayter was Opeth, specifically Blackwater Park, as the model for a very particular trick. A passage of real beauty, sitting next to something genuinely sinister, with nothing in between them, seamlessly. This year the band released a new album, Circadian Promise, and I asked Yegor about it before we got anywhere near Harbingers. Before we get into Harbingers, I wanted to ask about the new record. It sounds like letting go of a huge part of your life, but also the prospect of something new and good. New music, new chapter, literally, thematically. Yeah. How does that feel?
I mean, it feels like an evolution for sure. But at the same time, I feel like every album feels like an evolutionary stage. It's never really the same. I mean, there are common denominators that stay across all the records, but something always changes, well, at least in my eyes, for the better. So whether it be like structurally or I don't know. I mean, thematically, it's still pretty much the same. It's deals with a lot of just raw life shit, just living with I mean, for me personally, like coping with depression, and just specifically on this album, one of the bigger themes is acceptance and not fighting something that's inevitable, and just coming to terms with it and learning to live with it. And not just necessarily depression in general, but just anything really that could be an impediment in your life. So, that's a big part of the record.
That theme, acceptance rather than resistance, coming to terms with something rather than fighting it, turns out to be the thread that connects the entire catalog, old song to new. I asked Yegor directly what writing something so emotionally honest costs him and what it gives back. Yeah, I mean, writing something this emotionally honest about mental health and death, and what does that cost and what does that give back? Like, is it I imagine it's extremely helpful. But
yeah, I mean, personally, like it keeps me out of therapy. It's my way of externalizing. You know what I mean? And um, I find it a lot more beneficial, at least in some ways, than uh, talking to somebody. It's like I said, it is a lot more honest. There's some things that you can't convey in words to somebody, but through music, that door is wide open.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I think it's a matter of kind of like practicing what is preached, I guess, with metal, but like to a really really strong like pure degree, meaning um, people that are into extreme music that are kind of that if they have to explain it to someone that isn't into extreme music, the kind of common principle is that it's like an outlet. It's like taking all these things, and putting them out there so that they're not inside of you, but I just think Fires is like really potent with really following through with that.
Later in our conversation, I asked about the album cover itself, Circadian Promise, and where that came from. So before we move on to Harbingers, I'm curious about Circadian Promise in the name. It sounds to me sort of cyclical. It sounds like dreaming and sleep cycles, and I know you guys touched on that with Agonic Dreaming at the end. How'd that name come about? What does that mean to you guys?
well, it is about something that's cyclical. I mean, if you consider just your life in general and a routine, and a lot of it does follow like a cyclical pattern, and the circadian rhythm. I mean, something is
Mm-hmm.
always guaranteed, right? And then you
Sure.
think about uh, just existentially
Yeah.
about life in general. I mean, um, there are certain things that are inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
and they are guaranteed, and they're not so easy to come to terms with. But you will have to figure it out
For
at some
sure.
point. That's the source of the name.
Is that sort of like a memento mori kind of phenomenon, that death is inevitable? Like, know that you too shall die one day.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, that can factor in.
Yeah.
I just I just feel that it makes living a lot easier once you accept something that is not so difficult to accept.
Yeah.
Once you stop fighting with it.
At one point in our conversation, I floated a theory that across 3 albums, Fires in the Distance might be building something like a mythos. Not a concept album in the Mastodon sense, but a living, breathing body of work that sits within its own world. Yegor pushed back on that immediately, and this is what he said. It's like, it's more than a body of work. Like, it seems to me you guys are starting or you've been telling this really amazing story, and there's characters, and there is, it's like a tome, and it's a living volume. It keeps being added to and referenced back. Am I off base here? How does that
I
sound to you
mean,
guys?
yeah, you could look at it that way, but it's just a diary of my life, man.
Yeah.
There's no real characters. Like I said, the lyrics are extremely vague for a reason.
Yeah.
I would want people to be able to relate whatever they want to it, because people have their own experiences, and like what I'm trying to convey, I don't want to make it so finite and detailed to where somebody's, it takes away that ability from a listener. So,
Of course. Yeah. No, that
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense.
kind of the problem I've always had with like entertaining the idea of concept albums
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. Like as soon as I start, you know, exploring that, I feel like I'm like kind of just superimposing myself on the music in a way that's like rude or like not accurate too, because I mean like the music, like the riffs are like they're saying like a million different things to a
Yeah.
million different people. So, and plus there's like the phenomenon of like, okay, so the biggest concept albums being like, I don't know, Tommy by The Who
Sure, of
and
course.
Pink Floyd The Wall. A huge fan of both those albums, and the thing about it is the songs themselves far transcended the concepts that those dudes put together. Like
100%.
Pinball Wizard is like has reached this level of like human adoration that has nothing to do with like the Deaf Dumb and Blind Kid, and the same with
Yeah.
Comfortably Numb. I mean, you have The Wall, then you have Comfortably Numb, which is one of the most celebrated songs in human history, right? And like it doesn't have anything to do with the story anymore.
That distinction matters enormously for how you should hear everything that follows. This isn't a story being told to you. It's a document of an internal state, left deliberately vague enough that you can pour your entire self into it, which makes what I'm about to tell you even stranger. Harbingers, what it was actually called. So I asked Yegor directly where Harbingers came from. Not a theory, not a reading, just where did the song start? So turning to Air Not Meant For Us, I want to ask you guys about specifically the meaning behind Harbingers directly, because I have a theory about it, and I'm genuinely not sure I'm right. Where did that song come from for you? Harbingers.
I mean, honestly, man, it's really hard to identify these sources. Like when I write songs, it's just something that I feel at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with every record. It's just a reflection of what I'm going through, what phase like my head is in, and it's all in like an internal thing. And just pinpoint something specific, it's a bit of a loaded question, to be honest with you. It's like I said, these things come like music first, and then you kind of almost want to say decorate it with words.
Sure.
So where I was in my head at that time is what that song is. So it's been what 4 years, no, 3 years now. I don't fucking remember, to be honest with you. It must have been something deep.
Yeah. Fair. That's a real and honest answer, and it should be respected as a final word on the origins of the song. But then something remarkable happened. When I offered my own reading on the song, that the narrator makes a choice to accept death to protect someone he loves, in the mode of A Quiet Place, Yegor said something that stopped me completely. To me, the narrator makes a choice. I'll never see daylight, but I've seen enough. The threat in the song is never described physically. It's pursuing, it's gaining, it's ancient. But it's not a monster in the conventional sense. One read I had, and tell me if I'm off base here, was something like the movie A Quiet Place. The father who makes a sound in the world where sound means death just to save his kid. So basically, I hear a sacrifice to save a loved one. I'll never see your face again. That's a price I'm willing to pay. Is that a fair read?
It actually is. It's funny you say that, because initially that song was supposed to be called Alexander, and it was about a Russian poet named Pushkin who had a very tragic love life. So the fact that you make that connection and analogy is pretty insightful. How that song ended up, at the end of the day, doesn't necessarily reflect the idea that I started it with, but that was a root.
So the song we know as Harbingers is actually about the single most important man in Russian literary tradition, Alexander Pushkin. A man who died at 37 in a duel defending his wife's reputation after a long, publicly humiliating campaign about rumors of her fidelity. Pushkin knew the duel would likely kill him. He fought it anyway, a tragic love life ending in willing, foreseeable acts of sacrifice. That's not the song's finished meaning. Yegor was very clear that the final version of the song does not necessarily reflect where it started. He left the lyrics intentionally vague enough so that the listener can bring their own life and their own perspective to it. That's the root, but it changes how I hear that central lyric completely. I'll never see daylight, but I've seen enough. Not just a soldier or a father in a horror film. A poet, deliberately walking into a duel he knows he probably won't survive to save something he values more than his own survival. Brendan had his own image of that same feeling, and he brought it up even before I floated my theory, and it stuck with me ever since.
I wondered at one point about a potential like kind of Icarus type of influence there,
Mm-hmm.
with like the wings ablaze and kind of just like crashes imminent. You have wings, but you're falling from a great height. I'm like,
Sure,
I wonder if this is like an Icarus type of thing,
For sure, yeah, I can definitely see that. Two different mythologies. A Russian poet's duel, and a Greek boy's wax wings, both landing on the same gesture, knowing what the cost is and willing to pay it anyway. A Quiet Place, Lights Out, and The Mist. Three shapes of the same sacrifice. Now, with that context in place, let's go through the 3 films properly, because Yegor engaged with all 3 of them and the through lines across them. A Quiet Place, 2018, John Krasinski's film about a family surviving creatures that hunt by sound. In the film's climax, Lee Abbott draws the monster away from his children by screaming. The only sound he has left is his own death. Lights Out, 2016, a film about the monster Diana, who is explicitly an allegory for depression, attached to a woman named Sophie, isolating her from the ones who love her. The ending? Sophie chooses to die so that her illness does not affect her children. And then The Mist, 2007, the darkest of the 3. David Drayton, believing that there is no hope left, kills his own children and everyone in the car to spare them a worse death, only for the military to arrive moments later. When I brought up how unfortunate this timing was to Yegor, he completely reframed the ending for me. Also, The Mist, it's a little different. That's actually really unfortunate because, he ends his kid's life just before help is actually about to show up. But
yeah, but I mean, what is more real than that scene, though?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, great analogies.
Oh.
But I think all of those have little bit, to do with the concept of the song for sure. Even though it might not have been overt, but yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
All those feed in.
What is more real than that scene? Not how tragic or how ironic. Real. He was interested in the truth of a person acting on the information they have, with total conviction, regardless of what the universe might have in store for them. That reframes Harbingers also. The narrator falling through the blizzard isn't wrong about anything. The sacrifice doesn't require a happy ending to be real. There was a 4th image too, one that I brought up myself and that I'll be honest about. A Hodor Game of Thrones comparison. A man who turns out to be in the service of holding a door so that others might get through. It's not a horror pairing in the strict sense. It's more sci-fi. But it does belong in the same family as everything else here. A life justified for what it gave up for someone else. Beauty is the message, not the decoration. So, I wanted to push past the lyrics for a moment and discuss the music itself. Whether the guitar was doing something as structurally important as the much-discussed pianos and strings. So I want to push on something specific about the music itself, not just the lyrics. Everyone talks about the piano. I mean, the piano and the strings in Air Not Meant for Us really, really stand out. But I also think, and as they should, but I think beyond the beautiful arrangement, the guitar work is doing something just as beautiful in its own way. The chug and the melody sitting on top of it, it has a beauty. Was that intention? Like, were there some choices there to sort of marry the emotion with the orchestral sounds and the piano and the guitar work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to that contrast that we were talking about the power with the subtlety.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly like layering things like strings and especially if you think about Harbingers in that middle section.
Yeah.
It starts with that piano melody, which halfway through is modulated into a higher octave, mm-hmm. and it brings it up to a much more explosive and stronger emotionally point. So yeah, I mean, all of that is intertwined, and just song structure basically. So I mean, it takes a while to finally settle on a structure that you're happy with, because I mean, Brendan can tell you I send him ideas back and forth, like, I don't know, once I'm on a roll like 20 times a night, and be like, oh, sorry, you got to delete this. Here's the updated version. Like 5 seconds later, it's like, sorry, I thought of another change. Here's the updated version. So I'm, all my guys are sick of me fucking doing that when I'm like really in the zone there. But
I ask directly, does the beauty in the composition reinforce the theme of sacrifice and release, or does it pull against it? Is there tension, or is it unified?
No, it's all one thing. It definitely reinforces it, yeah.
One message, not two things in conversation with each other, one expressed simultaneously. I brought up a film that I think about exactly with this question. Midsommar. Ari Aster's 2019 folk horror film, shot almost entirely in saturated daylight, drenched with light, awash with flowers. Where the beauty isn't in contrast to the horror, it is the horror, and at the end, the protagonist's release. He never quite framed it that way, but he didn't disagree. But it was Brendan who made the connection that actually mattered.
I haven't seen Midsommar yet. I guess what I kind of gathered is that it might be kind of generally Wicker Man-ish.
He was exactly right. Midsommar is essentially Wicker Man updated for a modern audience, right down to the warmth of the community that was hiding something no one ever saw coming. Absolutely. It is essentially Wicker Man updated, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about Wicker Man in the episode after this. Going to talk about Decapitated, and there's sort of, rail against organized religion being a cult, and a line that's drawn to the cult that's in Wicker Man. But yeah, Midsommar is and I think it does it justice. Wicker Man's a little better maybe, but Midsommar is pretty solid. This isn't a coincidence for this show. The very next episode features Decapitated and the Wicker Man directly, and Brendan had one more film nerd credential that I was not expecting.
I mean, you got Christopher Lee, and you have those great like kind of philosophical religious debates that the cop and Christopher Lee are having the whole time about God and stuff. It's just like you can't beat that stuff.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, for sure. So sort of circling back to what we were talking about before about horror's place in metal and metal's place in horror. If a horror director came to you guys and said, "Score my film," what does that film look like? What's the story there?
I don't know about you, Igor.
What's left when you strip the horror label away? Before we got to that question, I asked something more basic. Horror has always been a place we put things that we cannot talk about directly. Does metal do the same thing? Brendan took this one. So, horror has always been a place to put things that we can't talk about directly. Do you think metal does the same thing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you go ahead, Brendan. You can answer.
Oh, I mean, I was just gonna say. I mean, like maybe in general, yeah, but probably in completely different ways. Mm-hmm. And I do think maybe explore, like, both mediums have things that can be explored that the other can't, kind of, where, yeah, I mean, like, just visual art versus sonic art, is obviously there's a massive difference there, but it's just like, yeah, like going for the things that are unsettling or that you don't understand. And it's kind of like with music, it's kind of the same as like poetry or like prose poetry, where a poem, like a good lyric or poem or something, you can illustrate what you're looking at in great detail, but then like at the same time, like that same stanza will have like a part about how it's making you feel, or like what you're relating it to, that's like completely personal to you. I like that kind of back and forth of like prose poetry and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe that's what music has that maybe movies don't, unless there's an obvious like narrator or something like that, or if it's that type of movie. But
his actual comparison was to poetry, how a lyric can describe something in detail, and in the same breath tell you exactly how to feel about it, something that film cannot do without a narrator. But he did give film one cred due. It has the ability to shock visually.
Movies have the advantage of, just visual design and visual shock, obviously. I mean, like, like there are moments that you're going to see in movies that, like, nothing, you're never going to listen to anything that's going to, like, freak you out quite like, the images. So
that's a real considered answer, not a talking point. Music can hold description and feeling together, line by line. Film can put an image in front of you that a lyric could never do. Neither medium wins. They're doing different jobs. As covered earlier, Brendan had his own strong instinct about not wanting to define an album as a story. He called defining it, too specifically, superimposing himself on the music. Is there a horror tradition in this music at all, or is horror the wrong word entirely?
It's definitely something existential and philosophical, for sure. Horror, though, I don't know. I don't see a lot of really connections to horror in our music in particular. I mean, if you think of a band like Karak Angren, for example, that's your perfect horror band.
Yeah.
But with Fires, it's not really. There's no real connotation there.
Sure.
It's more
Yeah,
about
the closest it could get, I think, would be kind of like a ghost movie that isn't necessarily like scary. It's more like almost like emotional, supernatural type of thing.
That distinction matters for this entire episode, and honestly for this entire show. Harbingers isn't horror in the sense that a haunted house or a slasher film is horror. It's something more ethereal, more existential, not something supernatural in any literal sense, but reaching for the same territory that horror reaches for, giving the unbearable a shape that you can actually look at. We touched on this earlier too when I brought up films about achieving something beyond yourself through death. Flatliners, that idea of playing God to get you somewhere flesh and bone can't do. Brendan lit up on that one. Right? So unless you're making a horror film, you can't go the other way. It's a one-way street.
like Martyrs, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Flatliners is fun. That's a great movie.
Totally.
I really like the concept because it's a new way of exploring like the playing God type of thing.
Totally.
And just like, yeah, I mean, because they all suffer some serious consequences for what they did too, you know.
Playing God and paying for it. That's Frankenstein. That's Herbert West Reanimator. That's an old story, and Brendan is entirely read in on it. That the real horror isn't the transgression itself, but the shape of what it cost you. That is exactly the thing that this show exists to talk about. Agonal dreaming came up too. The medical phenomenon behind the title of the song. The possibility that in the final dying moments, the brain has one last vivid dream. I'm curious about the name agonic dreaming. When I think of agonic breathing, that's sort of like those are the last few gasps that the body sort of tries. The lungs are no longer processing oxygen, but the body is twitching in the throes of death. Is there some wordplay there with agonic dreaming and the whole circadian
No, of course there is. Yeah, I mean, coming from medicine, just in knowing what that term means, I've always, for some reason, connected it to is there something like an agonal dream, in the last few seconds of your life, into a DMT trip or something? Does something like that happen? Maybe it does. I think, I don't know, might have been already proven that it does happen, but I don't know for a fact or not, but that was basically the concept. It was in the last few seconds, what do you see? What do you think about? What does your brain process?
Nobody knows the answer. That not knowing is the entire territory this band works in. Brendan had the real last word on the subject, and it's worth sitting with.
I mean, I like talking about that song because I think it's a really, really interesting addition to the pantheon. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that concept that can be explored and unpacked, and it makes it really potent, I think, with this type of music, because I mean, a lot of similar, generally similar styled bands, I mean, it's just sort of all sadness all the time, right? And that's great, and it's very releasing for what it is. But then it kind of gives that struggle a new dimension by acknowledging that sometimes things are okay. And that kind of makes the battle more real when you start to sink back into things not being okay. Showing just enough of the sun to make the dark that much more dark, that much more real.
Alexander Pushkin, a duel he didn't have to fight, a poem that became, in the room with me, 3 different horror movies, an Icarus myth, and agonal dreaming, something that neither of us fully resolved. Yegor put it more simply than I ever could right before we wrapped.
I mean, basically, it just boils down to there's no light without dark. So how would you know the difference?
Next episode, we go to Poland, and a Scottish island where absolute belief burns hotter than any monster. Decapitated and the Wicker Man. Who's really the cold? Until then, Stay heavy, stay scared, and hold your loved ones a little tighter tonight. Fulci lives. That's a wrap on this one. Thank you for listening to Screaming Projector. New episodes drop regularly. You can follow us on Instagram at Screaming Projector, and you can find everything at screamingprojector.com. I'd like to hear what you have to say. I want to know what your thoughts are. Hit me up at dave@screamingprojector.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps new people find the show. If you'd like to help support what we're building here, we're on Patreon. Every little bit helps. Until the next time, stay heavy, stay scared. Fulci lives. Screaming Projector is a production of Screaming Projector Media. Music by D218 and Dave.